Hey everyone, this is Rick down here at Carry Furnaces, working on the 48-inch universal plate mill, and we're going to take a little look at the crankshaft today. So we briefly went over it in the first video, but we'll talk about this a little bit more today here. So this is the power takeoff. You had a coupling, box coupling, and then a spindle, and this is where the power left the engine going over to the rolling mill. So it was a 2-cylinder reversing engine. So here's one of the cranks for that, and it also had three main bearings. This one here on the left, one in the middle, and one on the other side of the balance wheel. So towards the end of its life, this bearing was failing, and they ran it as long as they could, and you can see how bad that bearing has gotten, and then you can see what it did to the crank itself. Really no idea how this could have happened and how this could have went on this long like this, but yeah, it was running pretty hot there towards the end. This center bearing is not nearly as bad. It's wallowed out somewhat, but doesn't have nearly as deep of the grooving as the other one. And then the one over here on this side, yeah, that's not that bad either. So that can be dealt with. We got some grooving over here, but I think we could take care of that. So what we plan to do with the engine for this mill is to restore the engine so that it can turn over with an electric motor driving the crankshaft, and then driving all the connecting rods and the valve gear and everything. So when you look at the engine when it's on exhibit, we can have it turning over to animate all the parts on it. So to do that, we need at least two bearings to be good. So the one on the outside and this one here, we're going to see if we can get someone to come out here and do some in-place machining on both of those to true up their surfaces. On this one here, since we already have two bearings, we don't need a third. We can pretty much just let this one here float and not even touch anything. As a matter of fact, we're going to melt the babbitt out of this bearing, so it'll just be there, but it's not going to touch anything. Because you don't need the third one for what we're going to do. And secondly, this is interesting. I don't want to really erase this, the damage that happened to this crankshaft. We need to preserve that, so we're just not going to touch that. We're going to clean up the other two, but we're going to leave that. There's an interesting story behind what happened here that I don't want us to to forget about. So one of the other things that we have to do is make new connecting rod bearings for the big end of the connecting rod, since the old ones were lost. So that means making a new one for this, and another one for the crank pin at the far end. So the first step in doing that is find out what size we have, and come up here and take a look. Now, some of you may be familiar with these and others may not, but this is a Starrett circumference tape. And so what it does is, when you wrap it around something like this, it tells you how big in diameter you have. So I can't really do too much here because I got one hand on the camera, but we came up with 22.650 inches diameter right here, and it's 22.710 about right here. You can see a little bit of grooving in here. That's not that bad. I don't know if we're going to do anything to this surface or not, but we can make a new lining and babbitt lining and install it, and then maybe have a run-in period to get this seating as good as we can. It's not really going to be transmitting power anymore. All it's going to be doing is just rotating slowly for a few minutes at a time for demonstration purposes. So we may be able to get away with less than perfect surface on the on this crank pin. But I thought I'd just like to show you one of the tools of the trade. You know, a pie tape or a circumference tape. These are very handy when you're trying to take measurements on large diameters like this. And it's also useful for steam locomotive tires and actually all railroad tires and wheels, which is, they call them tape sizes. And so you get your exact size for the tires or the wheels on either side of the wheel set, because they have to be the identical diameter. If one's a little bit bigger than the other, it's not going to want to track right. So in railroading, we also use these circumference tapes. So the other crank pin here is much smaller. Of course, it wasn't transmitting the power through a return crank, you know, like we are on the other side. So it had a much smaller connecting rod and crank pin. So this one here also needs new bearings made for it. And this actually is in fairly nice shape. I think just polish that up and it should be good enough. So, so that's pretty much what we got going on here right now with the 48-inch project. I've not been doing too much on the mill itself lately, as we've been working on getting some machine tools set up and kind of getting the shop here in a better condition and more amenable for us for doing work in here. As we get rid of some unnecessary stuff out of here, install some tools, do some utility improvements and others to make things a little bit easier for us working in here. So until we get some of that done, we're not going to be doing too much on the mill itself. And we're also waiting for a crane to get in here, which we've acquired to help us with the project. So that's all I've got for you right now. And I'll be making videos as we make progress on this project. All right. Thanks everyone for your interest.